On my first St. Patty's Day as an adult, the girls and I went out for drinks, dressed in green, and partied past midnight. I couldn't have asked for a better time with them, but eventually, we had to go home. Being responsible, we took the train. The streets were already dead by the time we decided to make our way to the subway station. Once underground, we boarded the last train of the night together. We were still lit as we got moving. Each of us lived within walking distance of that same line, but at different stops along the way. Some of us got off in small groups or in pairs, while others left alone, promising to text the group chat as soon as they made it home. One by one, our group dwindled. The train grew quieter, emptier. I was one of the last girls off. I left alone, waving goodbye to the few remaining friends that had stayed with me. The station was a ghost town. I got out of there quickly. I couldn't believe how late we had stayed out. Every intersection I passed was cornered by more empty streets and lifeless sidewalks. And just as I was getting comfortable with the feeling of being so alone, I was not. Close to my apartment, the street was now completely empty except for a single car parked on the curb. The lights were off, but as I got near it, I could hear music coming from inside. It wasn't upbeat music though. It sounded old and out of key. The car was even parked the wrong way, facing me on the same side of the street I was on. Despite everything odd about the car and how dark out it was, I didn't change course. That would only make me cross directly in front of it, which didn't feel any better than walking past it. So I decided to just step a few feet to the side and mind my business. As I walked past the car, the window slowly rolled down. Chills ran down my spine and I started to panic. I averted my eyes and picked up the pace, not wanting to make eye contact. I managed to walk past the car without being catcalled, but then a moment later, I heard the door open. There was no other car on the street. It had to be the same one, but I didn't turn my head to make sure. I just had to keep my cool.
Don't look back, don't engage. You just had a little too much to drink, and they're probably way drunker than you. So just stop being paranoid and...
If I had looked back, I would have seen how close he got and how soon he closed the gap. I just didn't expect it. I never thought people would actually be so evil. My optimism didn't help me. The man kept me silent with a vice grip around my throat and dragged me all the way back to his car. By the time he took me there, I was so close to passing out I didn't have the strength to fight back. He had already overpowered me, and in that state, there was nothing I could do.
Relax, your Uber's here.
Let me go!
Just get in there.
Let me out of here! I'm being abducted!
Shut up! The louder you get, the worse shit I'm gonna do to you.
I don't care! Let me out!
You're already gonna beg for mercy, bitch. Would you rather beg for death?
You're a piece of shit! I hope you crash!
I'll make you wish you never stepped foot outside on St. Patty's Day.
I was in full-blown panic mode. I couldn't think. I just acted on every impulse. Even though the door hadn't opened the last 20 times I tried, I kept pulling the handle as hard as I could. Suddenly, it gave way. The door opened, and I tumbled out without even trying. I rolled across the asphalt over and over, finally skidding to a stop in the middle of the road. My injuries and the pain that came with them should have knocked the wind out of me, made me sit there in agony. But adrenaline is a hell of a thing. I got up without skipping a beat, then started sprinting in the opposite direction. I ran and ran until I plowed into a random man walking the street. He was drunk and confused, probably almost as scared as I was, but he called the police and ushered me to a 24/7 store where I could be safe. Soon, the authorities came, took me to the hospital to get treated, and wrote down my statement. I gave them every detail I could remember. The man's age, his hair, his glasses, his car, but sadly, it wasn't enough. When he kept going after I fell out of his car, that was the last I ever heard or saw of him. He was never found. Ever since then, St. Patty's Day triggers this traumatic memory, and at the first thought of going out, my brain forces me to relive this story, the story of how I was almost kidnapped. An 18-year-old woman escaped a would-be kidnapper during St. Patrick's Day weekend festivities on the near north side. The woman was walking on a sidewalk Saturday when a man left a vehicle and grabbed her by her arm shortly after noon. The man placed her in the vehicle, and as the vehicle began to move, the woman opened the door and ran off. The woman ran several blocks north to a Walgreens, where someone called an ambulance. Paramedics took her to St. Joseph Hospital, where she was treated for a panic attack. Police said the woman reported no injuries. The suspect fled in a black four-door Ford. He was about 30 years old and wore reading glasses. Since then, no arrests have been made.
St. Patrick's Day might be the worst holiday. It brings out the worst in people, emboldened by copious amounts of alcohol and mob mentality. If you don't believe me, just know that I have proof. My work takes me all over. It's less common now, but years ago I would often spend more time living in hotels than I did in my own home. Usually, I spent the weekends working out of town. When my job was finished, I would head back to the city for the weekend. One day, I was on a bus heading back into the city after a long week. As we neared downtown, more and more drunk people started piling onto the bus. Even the street was filled with belligerent crowds, and for whatever reason, they were all wearing green. Oh, duh, I said to myself. It's St. Paddy's Day. Of course, I was hardly in the mood to celebrate. I was still in my work clothes, which were highly visible but didn't have a lick of green, and I was aching for a shower followed by about 12 hours of sleep. And yet, the closer we got to the heart of downtown, the more I got an itch. At a particular stop, I saw a bunch of St. Paddy's Day celebrators getting off all at once, so I figured this was the place to be. I stood up and stepped off with them, entering a wildly overstimulating environment. I hoped having a drink or two would help me loosen up, yet I was still overwhelmed. I tried talking to several people, but everyone was clicked up, and it all felt impenetrable. Realizing I was out of my element, I hunkered down at a spot at the bar and started drinking from their well. I don't know how much I spent that night, but it was a lot. By the time the bar closed, I was in deep, on the verge of blacking out. I had enough function left to pay my tab and get kicked out with everyone else without causing a problem, but that was about it. Right outside the bar, I stood among a crowd of assorted drunks, mostly in groups, as I staggered back and forth alone, trying to figure out how to get home. While there, I caught a sight of a specific group of men who had already noticed me. I could hear what they were saying, and I could see them scowling at me, but I knew I wasn't able to interact properly, so I tried to ignore them.
Hey, buddy, what are you looking at?
Don't look away now, bro. We're talking to you.
Yeah, come here.
Can you believe this guy? Taking up space at the bar all night, and he's not even wearing green. I think he should get what he deserves. As wasted as I was, I knew those guys wanted trouble, so I turned my back and started walking away, then managed to order myself an Uber. Unfortunately, it was going to take 10 minutes to get to me. I figured I could circle the block a few times until it arrived, but I had a problem. I was being followed. Those jerks from the bar weren't finished. I kept thinking if I just ignored them, they would give up, but they were getting closer and meaner with every second. When I finally looked back, I was just in time to see the fist coming from my face. I fell onto my back, putting my arms up to stop what's coming, but nothing I did or said was going to stop that gang of scumbags from beating the life out of me.
Wear green next year, you stupid tourist! Stop, please! Stomp his throat! Shut his bitch ass up! No! Stay out of our city!
Ah! Soon after the beating began, I went unconscious. Being drunk only made me more defenseless, and it kept me under for hours. When I woke up, it was morning. I was stripped naked, and everything on my person had been stolen. There was no sign of the men who attacked me. They dragged me behind a dumpster in a filthy alleyway so nobody would find me, forcing me to crawl out into the street, naked, begging for help. Passerby threw some clothes over me and called an ambulance. I was treated at the hospital, and as I spent the next few days recovering, I started to at least consider myself lucky that I survived with only minor injuries to my body. But that wasn't all. Next week, at work, I got a text from a family member I hadn't spoken to in a long time. They had come across a video of me online. It was from the attack. I had no recollection of being filmed, but I got to watch it clear as day along with millions of other people. As those men continued beating me, even after I'd gone unconscious, they took everything off of me, laughed at and insulted me, and did it with pure and utter joy. I felt absolutely humiliated. It took months and the hard work of internet strangers done in good faith to identify and arrest my attackers. Not all of them were found, though. Some of them are still at large. Ever since then, I have loathed St. Patrick's Day. The attack, which police say happened on March 18th after St. Patrick's Day celebrations, was captured by at least 2 cameras, went viral. Onlookers laughed and did nothing to help, as a man was beaten, stripped, and robbed on the street in Baltimore. Police say they have identified one suspect, but have made no arrests. They are not releasing the victim's identity, except to say he was a 31-year-old man from Arlington, Virginia. The victim was on the way to his hotel from a downtown Baltimore club. The man had been drinking. He told me he couldn't recall exactly what happened, but the video filled in the blanks. In them, a man is seen standing, unsteadily, against a row of mailboxes. A crowd starts to gather and women dance suggestively against him. Someone notices his watch and a hand seems to grab something from one of the man's front pockets. He pursues the supposed thief and is punched in the face. The man falls over backward and his head hits the sidewalk so hard it could be heard on the video. Smack down, someone yells. His pockets are rifled and his clothes pulled off. Some people can be heard laughing, but no one comes to his aid.
On the night of St. Patrick's Day, I stayed in. I was in bed and just couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for what must have been hours. I kept drifting on and off, but then, suddenly, a searing pain ripped through my arm. I shot up and clutched the wound, a deep gash running down the length of my forearm. I looked up and saw my door wide open. Loud footsteps were banging down the hall, like something was running away. Someone had to be in my house. I reached for my phone to call the police, but it wasn't connected to the charger. It was gone. They must have taken it. It was at that very same moment I realized nobody was supposed to be home that night. I couldn't just sit in bed and wait to bleed out, or for whoever broke in to come back. I had to get up and do something about it. I stood up, nearly falling over. I turned my attention to the open door. I couldn't hear the footsteps anymore, but that didn't mean they were far. Quietly, I crept over and stopped just before going through, slowly leaning over to peek my head out into the hall. It was dark, though it seemed empty. But then, I heard this tortured sound. It was distant, but still in the house. The basement. It had to be. But what the hell was it? It was half like a dying animal roaring in pain and half like a person screaming. In spite of my fear, I forced myself out of the room, then carefully made my way downstairs. I started to walk to the front door, but I saw something out of the corner of my eye. The door to the basement was open. A light down there was flickering on for just fractions of a second at a time, blinking spastically. I walked to it, found the switch, and tried to turn it off, but nothing changed. The light kept on flickering. And down there, somewhere, was a quiet voice. I couldn't tell if it was crying, laughing, or whimpering, but it sounded scared. And then a thought hit me. It could be someone in my family. They could have come home early and got attacked. There was a good chance they were worse off than me. I had to go and check on them. And when I reached the bottom, I saw them. They weren't a burglar or a family member. They were something else. In the middle of the basement floor, facing away from me under the flickering light, was something I could only describe as a leprechaun. I stood there in shock. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, pinched myself, but it was still there. It looked small but not harmless, like a human, but far from healthy. Without a good look at its face, I couldn't be sure of anything. Hello? What are you doing down here? What are you... It turned to look at me over its shoulder. That thing couldn't be human. Not a chance. I felt skewered by its eyes, unable to move or speak. I couldn't even look away as it began to grow. It didn't happen naturally. The bones and flesh of this creature broke and stretched over itself again and again as it grew to match my size. It turned its body to face me directly, beginning to tower over me. It never fully stood up, but hung from one hand gripping the rafters, then reached out to me with the other. The hand wrapped around me and drew me in closer, as its jaw began to smile and unhinge itself, making room for me to fit in. I couldn't close my eyes, scream, or fight. I was completely paralyzed. The inside of its mouth with jagged teeth was the last thing I saw, right before I felt it pulsating and pushing me down with wet, rotting flesh, piercing and tearing into every inch of my body. For a brief moment, I thought I reached the bottom of the leprechaun's stomach and found it to be the same as my bedroom, like I was already in hell and doomed to repeat this over and over. But no, it couldn't be. It was just a dream, the most awful, agonizing, and haunting dream of my life. And yet, when I looked down at my arm, it wasn't bleeding anymore, but there was a mark in the same spot, a scar in the same shape as the wound. Nothing like that had ever been there before. The dream wasn't entirely unreal. Some of it had to have come with me into the real world. I didn't know what to make of it. I spoke to my neighbors about it later, expecting them to call me crazy or overdramatic, but their reaction was quite the opposite. Everyone I talked to claimed to have seen a leprechaun in the area. Some claimed it was as whimsical and harmless as you could imagine, but others shared a story similar to mine, and many encounters in between blurred the lines of what this thing could be. I don't know if it's good or evil, but I know I'm not crazy, and I know that wasn't a dream. Every St. Patrick's Day, that night is all I can think about. This story was inspired by a viral internet leprechaun phenomenon that we wanted to do a nightmare fuel on for this year's St. Patrick's Day. It was based on the Crichton leprechaun, which was a supposed leprechaun reported to have been spotted in a tree in Crichton, a neighborhood of Mobile, Alabama.